Happy Monday, everybody. It is Memorial Day, but we are doing a show like we said last week. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. And Mike, we have quite a lot to talk about since today we got to find out what Arkansas's postseason fate would look like in the NCAA tournament. They got their regional draw, and that's exactly what we're talking about right off the bat. And it's from Mousetown, who's going to ask, what do you think about the field for the Fayetteville Regional? Good or bad? Did the selection committee stick it to us?
A lot better than last year. Doesn't mean it's a sure thing or anything like that, but both the regional and super regional looks like a better situation. But let's start with the regional. And I've got some graphics that'll kind of help us get into this. The surprise in this whole thing may be the 4 seed. Southeast Missouri State, just 34 and 25 on the season, second in the Ohio Valley, but they won their conference tournament. But here's what's scary. They hit 293 as a team, 98 home runs. You can't mess around with these guys in game one. So what does Dave Van Horn do? Do you say, okay, hey, we got to pitch Hagen Smith against these guys? Because if we go with somebody else, we've been giving up a lot of home runs lately with some of these other guys. So he's got a decision to make. Normally, I think he might save Hagen Smith for a possible matchup with Louisiana Tech, which is the 2 seed. But this is interesting. They pitch pretty good. Their pitching is not bad. I doubt Van Horn would use Hagen Smith in game. I'm not sure what he would do. Well, I guess we're going to find out later.
He didn't say anything in his press conference today about it. He held his cards close to his chest. So we're going to find out maybe before that game or maybe not. We'll see.
I mean, their pitching isn't terrible. 5.59 ERA. They're average defensively. Common opponents. They beat Missouri, but lost 2 or 3 to Little Rock. So there's that. Okay. Now, let's look at Louisiana Tech. 43 and 17, and that's impressive. They won Conference USA with an 18-6 record. But
that's Kansas State. So I think, well, there we go. Now we're on 2 seed Louisiana Tech. Sorry,
okay.
Mike.
And they won Conference USA with an 18-6 record, but lost to Liberty and Dallas Baptist in the conference tournament. They bat .299 as a team, have hit 88 home runs, got an ERA of right at 5. They're a good fielding team. Common opponent, LSU beat them 11-1, squeezed out a 7-6 win over Little Rock. Arkansas destroyed those guys. And they did win, however, 2 of 3 from Dallas Baptist, which was ranked for most of the year, but again, lost to them in the conference tournament. So again, I just don't compare them to TCU a year ago. We may be, it could be different once we start playing. But it doesn't look like you have the 2 seed that you did last year. And then there's Kansas State. They're the 3 seed. Wildcats were 32 and 14, finished tied for 6th in the Big 12. Got hammered early in the season by Tennessee, 15-5, lost 3 of 4 to TCU, and TCU didn't make the tournament.
Lost 2 of 3 to TCU?
Yeah, lost 2 of 3. And then they got knocked out of the Big 12 tournament by TCU. So what's our overall assessment? Don't overlook SEMO in that first game. I think that's problematic. But again, I go back to Arkansas's 33-3 record at home, and in order not to come out of your regional, somebody's got to beat you twice, and Arkansas hasn't lost twice at home to anybody. And they've played, I mean, if you look at these 4 teams, is any of them better than some of the better SEC teams that have come in here? No way.
There's 11 SEC teams in the NCAA tournament. That broke the record for the most that the conference has ever had.
So, you know, I feel good about it. When you start looking to the super regional, then that field is pretty good. It's pretty even. You've got Mississippi State lurking over there. You've got Virginia.
Yeah.
Let's say Mississippi State comes out of there, and it's by no means certain they would, but if they do, you got a rematch of this series that we had, 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago here in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
And it was tough. It was tough to win that thing.
But that's also a tough regional. I was reading some comments on D1 baseball, and they were saying a lot of people go, okay, Mississippi State or Virginia will come out of that regional. And some writers for D1 baseball were going, don't look past, I think it's Penn and Pennsylvania and St. John's who are in that regional with them. And they were like, don't look past their entire regional because there's some good teams in there. So I think you're exactly right. SEMO seems to be the one on this.
That's just the one thing that
like
you look at and go,
really?
whoa, that's a 4 seed. Wait a minute here.
They did the same thing in the Fayetteville Regional for the softball regional, where they put SEMO as the 4 seed. And I was looking at them and going, Man, they're a tough team for a 4 seed on softball.
We can't have that.
No, we can't have that at all. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Again, Dave Van Horn said, you know, they're not sure exactly what they're going to do right now, or maybe they are sure, and he's keeping his cards close to his chest with how they're going to set the rotation for this weekend. But you think maybe you do pitch Hagen Smith against Southeast Missouri, win that game 1, right?
I just don't know. It's a decision I'm glad I don't have to make.
Yeah, me either. I'm glad I don't have to be Dave Van Horn as well, Mike. All right, we're going to move on to talk a little bit more about baseball. Hog Redneck asked, what's up with all the internet fighting over the impact of the SEC tournament? To some, it was a disaster. Others say the South Carolina and Kentucky losses were meaningless. Which is it?
As far as the conference tournament, here's what you had. You had some fans on the internet just going bananas. Wait a minute, you're 2 and out, you laid an egg, you didn't care. That's not going to be good for the following up this week. And then you had other people pointing out correctly that Arkansas in the recent past has gone to Omaha twice when they went 2 and out. And in the history of the NCAA or the SEC tournament, not just Arkansas, but there are a lot of teams that have played poorly there and bounced back and played. It just, if you look at the whole history of this thing, and this is why I criticized it constantly, because historically it hasn't meant a lot, you know. So other people have pointed that out. But we got a graphic here from a Facebook guy that I read, and I think he sums it up. And I think it goes beyond the conference tournament. And this is what Tom Bates said. I can see how our showing in the conference tournament isn't that important, but we've now lost 7 of our last 11 overall. Took 46 games to lose our first 7, then 4 and 7 over the final 11. Yeah, that's really the heart of the matter. In a month, they've gone from 39 to 7 to 43 and 14. And that's what people are worried about. Now, I think when we look back, I think we talked about how the schedule was front-loaded with teams you could beat this year. And we always looked down the road and went, ooh, look who's ahead. We're going to go on the road to Kentucky. We're going to go on the road to A&M. We got a tough Mississippi State team at home, you know. So we knew that was coming. So has this team really gotten worse, or are they just playing better teams right now? And I think they're playing better teams. I don't think the pitching, the staff ERA has gone up, but I think it's because everybody's giving up home runs. If you watch the SEC tournament, they were smacking the ball out of Hoover left and right, and Hoover used to be a tough place to hit the ball out of. Yeah. Now it's, I don't know if they're doing something to the bats. I don't know what's going on.
To that point, Dave Van Horn did address that as well in that press conference today, saying that the wind was blowing very favorably. Yeah. And so that's what he believes. A lot of it, when you were seeing them go, you know, left and right out of the ballpark, he believes it was due to that. And he said, other than that, I can't really give you an answer, though, because that's what I think it is.
Yackel gives up that home run. It's the first home run he's given up all year. And I just don't think you can expect to see that. I don't think that means, oh, he's falling apart. We're still not sure about Tigert. Tigert pitched 1 good inning. I think, what was it, the Kentucky game? He came in and pitched 1 good inning, and then it really started with a bunt that he rushed to field and reached down there. He should have probably been more careful. I'd have gone down and picked it up with my hand. But he tried to pick it up with his glove and muffed it, and that put a guy on, and the next thing you know, he gives up a 2-run homer, then he plunks a guy, then all kinds of stuff happened, and he's gone. I don't know what that means. To me, he's in a position right now where you think, okay, for 1 inning, I can really, that's what he used to be as a closer, a 1-inning guy. And he would come in and just shut people down. He always has had a history, the longer he goes, the more maybe he has problems. So maybe they stick him in that role, a spot reliever. Okay, the good thing that came out of this was Molina pitched well in 2 games. He may now have established himself as that other starter. But then Gage Wood, he was believed to have been the 3rd guy or the 2nd guy. He comes in and gets hammered. So, you know, I don't know. There are some things you have to take into consideration, but I still think Arkansas's bullpen is strong. I know they've got 1 solid starting pitcher, maybe 2. So I feel pretty good. I understand what they're saying when you go and look at other series that go back to the Kentucky series and everything. It looks like everything, you've got a losing record since then. But you look at, I mean, how many teams can go play Kentucky and A&M on the road and come out of that ahead? You know,
not a lot.
And then, again, I feel like what happened in the SEC tournament is Dave Van Horn altered his pitching. He didn't do what he's going to do in a regional. He started Ben Bybee, his midweek guy. He treated that Wednesday game like a midweek game, which it was, and I think that's what caused him to lose. If that game really, really mattered to him, he wouldn't have done that. So I'm just not freaking out too much over what happened in Hoover.
I mean, to go over like you said, the history of the SEC tournament, and even suggesting, I mean, let's say you go and you win it all, right? I mean, even that doesn't secure you or make you feel good going into the NCAA tournament. Can you win the whole thing there? Because it's happened, what, 3 times in the last 24 years?
Exactly.
That Vanderbilt's done it, LSU has done it twice. And so that's 3 times in the last 24 years that somebody has won the SEC tournament and gone on to win a national championship?
To me, I think the bigger issue is if Arkansas gets to Omaha all year long, fans have been hoping this was a national championship year. I don't think it is. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think they've got the hitting to win it all. The pitching is there, but I'm not sure the hitting is there. Although I said last week, and it could be true, that Omaha, the stadium is constructed in such a way that hitting is not the big issue, pitching is, but that could change too if the wind's different.
Absolutely, and we've talked about that on previous shows. So I guess we'll have to see. We're going to find out pretty soon what happens. S. Giles wants to know, what did you make of Vitello's statement after the Mississippi State game in Hoover? Apparently some of the players were calling him Tony during the game. He said he would never let any of his players call Van Horn Dave, a lack of respect thing. It's funny that Mississippi State was doing this because Van Horn said they were very chippy with them in that series,
and it sounds like to me that maybe, because they're friends, it sounds like to me that after the Mississippi State series here, he and Vitello probably had a phone call, and he mentioned to Vitello, look, I don't like it when because Dave Van Horn's gone on the record as saying, look, I don't like bullpen antics. I don't mind my players celebrating. I don't want them saying stuff to the other coach, saying stuff to the other teams, doing bat flips toward their dugout, anything disrespectful. I don't think there's any place in the game for that. And they may have been talking about that, and so this is Vitello's way of coming back and saying, yeah, those guys are jerks. I wouldn't let my team do that. Now, what's interesting is a real departure from a few years ago. When Vitello was first building Tennessee back, I feel like he felt like he had to do something to make them believe in themselves. And so I think he encouraged a lot of antics. They were doing weird stuff like putting on a special coat or something when they hit home run.
Has that not been washed in 4 years or something? Please wash that coat.
They were doing a bunch of stuff, and they were disrespecting other teams, and Vitello was out there chest bumping umpires and all this stuff. And when he got into it with Dave Van Horn after Arkansas beat them in Knoxville in a series, that really turned a lot of Arkansas fans away from him. I think their belief was always that because he was an assistant coach here, he has a lot of friends here, he's always told those friends, I'd like to come back there and coach someday. They were all assuming, yeah, he's going to be our next coach when Van Horn. But then when all that stuff happened, they were like, I don't want this guy, he's a jerk. Well, I don't think he was a jerk. I think there was a plan behind that. And I think once he realized, okay, we're established now, it's really good for me to see Vitello as the head coach of the #1 team in the country, who also won the SEC tournament. They didn't have these issues that other teams had in Omaha. So they won the conference tournament. They were the top seed. They won the SEC. They're the #1 team in the country. They're the #1 NCAA seed. So they're #1 out the wazoo. And he's being very humble right now. He's not acting like he did. So I like that.
Yeah, I listened to his interview on the selection show today, and it sounded, again, he was very humble. And he gave kudos to the SEC. And then how many teams got into the tournament this year, which I thought was really nice as well.
He's a different guy these days, and he's back to being a guy that we kind of liked.
Yeah, and I think there is he has respect for Dave Van Horn as shown in that answer to that question, and I think that's true. I don't know if I would like, if I was out there and they're starting yelling my first name out there, I'd be like, whoa, It's a lack of respect. I really do believe that.
So now we have a new enemy, Mississippi State. So if they come in here in a super regional,
we now have a new enemy.
Fans can yell at them.
I love it, Mike. KY Hawk says, I would never go to an SEC tournament in person, but it's okay on TV. I see where they're about to upgrade the place. Who is paying for that, and do any fans care except maybe LSU fans?
Well, I guess the city of Hoover is paying for it. I think they still own this thing. And they've already put $11 million into it. They were talking about that on the TV broadcast, and they're going to do some more after this, from this point on to next year, and it'll be a total of $24 million.
Oh, wow.
Now, why are they doing this? I don't know. Sounds like to me that they're going, oh, Texas is coming into the league. Those Longhorn fans will come in here and they'll spend a lot of money in Hoover. Now, what does Hoover have? Because we've both been there. What does Hoover have that would attract an LSU fan? Well, let's see. They got a mall.
They do.
Oh, boy,
I was about to say
let's
the big
go to a mall.
The mall
well,
is pretty
people
cool.
don't go to malls anymore like they used to, but let's go to the mall. Remember that song, Let's Go to the Mall?
Let's go to the mall? Yes,
yeah,
I remember
they got a
that
mall, and they have all these strip row buildings and things, and they got hotels, and then they got some restaurants that are okay, but they're mostly chain restaurants. It's just, to me, not a great trip. I never felt like it was great being there. I didn't like Rosenblatt. You probably never went to Rosenblatt.
No, I didn't, no.
But that was not a good part of town. And I didn't feel like that Rosenblatt was a good representative of what Omaha was. But when they moved it downtown, they've got a really good downtown area. They have fewer chain restaurants and more actual restaurants that are local that have stuff you've never eaten before. Yeah. So it's a good place to eat. They've got good nice hotels, and it's just the whole atmosphere in downtown. They celebrate. They do stuff out in the streets. They do some cool stuff. They got lots of merchandise everywhere. So where would you rather go? Would you rather spend your money in Hoover, or would you rather take a chance on your team going to the College World Series and going up to Omaha? That's what I would do. Hoover to me is like, bleh.
Omaha's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think Omaha's actually really, really cool. They have a zoo there.
Yeah.
We went to the zoo last time Arkansas went, and so
you
that
can
was
go
really
out
fun.
to where Rosenblatt was and stand there and go, oh, this was
It's
Rosenblatt.
by the zoo. It is by the zoo.
Yes.
So we did actually stand out there and go, oh, this is where the old stadium was.
So whatever, but yeah, I've never understood. To me, if it weren't for LSU fans, I don't think this tournament would have stayed in Hoover. Now, it's obvious that the SEC office likes it because it's just down the road from their office. So they don't have to go somewhere and travel and run this tournament. They can just go home at night, all the people that are working, and sleep in their own beds. I understand why they like it. But again, what makes this tournament work, it's interesting to watch on television. It's not something I think most fans would travel to, but it's okay to watch on TV. And then LSU fans, I think they like to show up there and go, look at us. We got 4 times as many fans as you do. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, go ahead and do it.
Have fun.
If this is a big deal to you, and it always has been. As long as I can remember, LSU fans always show up there, and it was like, we got more fans than you do. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, how about we take those tallies for fans in Omaha?
Maybe,
how about that, if you guys make it?
Maybe from here on out, we'll have LSU fans and Longhorn fans trying to outdo each other in Omaha, in Hoover.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Again, and I think I speak for a lot of fans when I say I'd rather go to Omaha. I would, and just for what it means too. I mean, we just talked about why the SEC tournament doesn't really matter, and there's a whole lot of fans that go out there and go, I don't really like the SEC tournament. I don't really want to go there. And just like KY Hog says, I would never go to it. So
yeah.
I don't know. For me, it's Omaha, honestly. Genuinely. Wizard of Hogs wants to know, and I think this is a really cool question. If you could add just one former Razorback to this year's baseball team for the postseason run, who would it be and why? For me, it has to be Kevin Kopps. And he goes into a very long explanation on Hogville of why he picked Kevin Kopps.
We couldn't put the whole graphic up there, but
exactly.
Here's the thing. Yeah, I mean, Kevin Kopps would be great. You're giving yourself an already good bullpen, a great guy in the bullpen. But Arkansas has a good bullpen. What they don't have is a guy like Heston Kjerstad at the plate.
I thought you were going to say Heston.
And that's who I would go with for a couple of reasons. Number one, he hits for an average. But number two, he hits for power, and they need a home run guy, somebody that consistently hit home runs. And finally, he doesn't leave a lot of guys on base. When he comes up there, he's going to drive them home. So he'd be my choice. And it wouldn't even be close with this team.
With this specific team, I agree with you there. I thought you were going to say Heston as well. So I agree with you. Hog Dogger asks, can you tell me the purpose of a double base at first? This was a big conversation because the SEC tournament implemented that this year.
Yeah, it's basically a safety issue. If you got a first baseman, and we've seen games, there's this runner lane where the runner is supposed to run, and if he gets in the way, he's out. But what we have is these inevitable collisions because the first baseman cannot control where the ball comes that he has to catch as a guy's coming down first base trying to run into the base. Well, this gives you more room. It doesn't guarantee you there won't be any collisions, but it puts more space. It gives both of them more space. So I understand why they did it. I'm not in favor of generally just a bunch of rules changes, but I think this one will, and they haven't done it, it's an experiment.
Yeah.
But I thought it went well. I thought it was okay. I'm not so sure it shouldn't be instituted all over baseball. Just think about this. Think about if McLaughlin suddenly got hurt in the SEC tournament in a collision and you don't have your first baseman anymore. Or take any of your hitters. Take Peyton Stovall. What if he is running along and you're doing this thing now and some catcher picks a bunt up and hits him in the back of the head?
Yeah, well, what about Arkansas has a great example of this. Brady Slavens,
yeah.
Right? What was it, 2021 when he had that ankle sprain? He would like to have a word with the people.
Yeah, so if this helps prevent that, I'm all for it. Now, from a practical standpoint, they kept talking about this, and I guess it's true. I wasn't there watching every game, but it looked like that having that extra base helped the base runner beat out throws to first a little bit more. In other words, they kept saying, hey, you'd probably been out if you just got a little more space here, and it looked like the base runners were a little more free in running to first and didn't have to pull up a little bit or whatever at the last minute. So probably helped the base runners a little bit in close plays, and I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, I wonder why it hasn't, because it, again, I wonder why it just hasn't been something that has been implemented. If it is for safety and if it is a good thing, she said the other day, she said because it doesn't look good. Is it, I mean, do you think
well, it's not traditional? Yeah, it looks kind of dopey. Especially the way they painted a different color.
Yeah.
They could just have it the same color or just have a bigger base, one that was twice as big, wide as it normally is. But they could do that actually on all of the bases. You couldn't do it at home plate. I don't see any way it would work at home plate.
Yeah.
Have a little thing off to the side that you could slide onto because it'd be in the way of the batter's box. So.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think it's a good thing. I think it should be implemented moving forward. Maybe that's something that they will start implementing moving forward. We'll see. Hog in Iowa says, word on the street is that Baum Walker actually has a home plate and is sometimes used by the umpire. However, it's not evident from the center field batter's eye camera. I don't think it would be a budget breaker to raise the camera platform up a couple of feet. We've actually addressed this on the show, what, a couple of weeks ago, Mike?
Well, it may be longer than
Maybe
that,
longer
but it's
than
come
that.
up before. If you go all the way back to when they first started putting TVs in the skyboxes, and I don't know when that was, but it was sometime, I don't know, 2000, 2002, 3 or whatever. They decided over at the U of A, hey, we've got all these people, paying money for these skyboxes. We got to give them a little frill here. We'll have a closed circuit thing that will show replays and things that give them something they wouldn't have if they were sitting in the stands. The problem was when they started doing this, they didn't have a center field camera. And so I walked in, I'm one of these people, I've talked to Alyssa about it 100 times. I much prefer the video from a televised situation than us taking one camera out there and sticking it behind home plate and shooting it because you only have one angle. And I think if you're watching video of the highlights, to me the critical part of it all is the pitch. Because you see where the pitch goes, you see where the ball is hit, and then it switches back and you see where it goes. And I always preferred that. And I'd never been able to do that unless on the rare occasion that a game was televised at Baum Walker, and they didn't televise very many of those back then. ESPN didn't do that very often. So I went to somebody over there at the U of A and I said, hey, if I brought my own camera of the station I work for out there, could you run a line out there and hook it up to it? And if you do, I'll stand out there and operate it. I said, I won't do anything. I'll make it a fixed camera where you just simply look straight at the pitch like you do in a televised game. And they went, yeah, that's great. They didn't have to buy a camera. I brought mine out there, set it up every week. They ran a line out there and everybody was happy, and then they let me use that video. They wouldn't let anybody else use it because I was providing the camera, and I felt, well, I've got exclusive video, blah, 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 and it all worked well for a while. Now, one of the things I told them almost immediately was the camera platform is too low. You can't see, and it's really too far off to the side too. It needs, there's room if you look at it, next time you're at Ball and Walker, if you look at where that platform is, they could move it right next to the batter's eye.
I looked at it last time we had this conversation. I was like, Mike is completely right.
There's some space there. So if they rebuilt it and moved it over next to the batter's eye, as you're looking at the batter's eye, it'd be on the left edge of it. And then if you raise it up, because what raising it up does is it allows you to see down to the plate. And that's what he's talking about. But here's the issue. When I offered this suggestion to them back when Jeff Long was here, I got a polite, shut up. We're running this place. They were polite.
Of course you did.
They weren't interested in that. And I don't think, I brought it up again, I don't think they are now, and here's why. Because who's not complaining about this? The people that use it. ESPN3, when ESPN comes in here for the SEC network or even an ESPN game, their people have to use it, and they're apparently not upset with it in any way. And I can only conclude that they're not getting very many complaints about this. There may be a few purists like me who watch a game on TV and will say, well, that looks weird. I think the camera ought to be higher. But apparently not many people are doing that. And if not many people are doing it, and if the network people aren't making the suggestion, why should they spend the money to change it? That's what I think is going on there.
So what you're saying is that everyone who's mad about this should complain, and maybe some change will happen.
I don't think a lot of people are complaining about it. That's my point. Maybe we get the complainers on Ask Mike. They know they can come here and complain.
We get the baseball purists on Ask Mike.
Yeah,
That's exactly what we get.
I don't know.
All right. Well, WV Hog fan says Coach Pittman, DBH, and Coach Cal are all getting up in age. How many more years do you see each one coaching?
Okay, I'm going to make a bunch of these anti-Pittman people mad. But look, I just base everything I say based on what I see. If you go back to the end of the season last year, what did I say? Might be time for Pittman to hang it up. He said, if he ever got to the point where he didn't think he was getting the job done, he'd just go retire and go to the races in Hot Springs, sit out by his little hog statue and wave at people that go by in their boats. And I thought maybe he's there because of the way the team collapsed at the end of the year. However, I also said I'm going to continue to pay attention to what's going on over there because that's my job. I watched it pretty closely. You did too. I think all of us did. The hiring of Petrino was a game changer in my opinion. Come on. You're going to sit here and assume they're going to be the same team as last year when you had Dan Enos compared to Bobby Petrino calling your offense? Give me a break. Now look at the difference in the quarterback. Oh yeah, you had KJ. Oh, he was great. And then he wasn't great because he got $750,000 a year and nobody else was getting hardly anything except Rocket Sanders. And his offensive line, there was just no leadership. How many times did we see him go sit down on the bench after a failed series and not talk to anybody? If you went over there this past spring and saw the interaction between Taylor Green and that offensive line, now let's look at the fact that you changed offensive line coaches. You got a guy that was here as a grad assistant that had always wanted to be here, came back here, and now he's working with what? Almost a totally rebuilt offensive line. I think they brought in four portal transfers. All of them are good. Then they've improved some of the guys that were already here. And again, I've said this before, they had a drill that I watched a lot, which was strictly a pass blocking drill. They'd get a grad assistant with a football. They'd line up the one defense against the one offense, and the whole idea was to get to that guy with the ball. And I would stand there and count 1,001, 1,002, 1,003. If you got to 1,003, your quarterback has time to do something. It wasn't like last year. And that's what I saw over and over again. So the pass protection was better. Then they addressed their running back situation. Went out and got a really good running back from Utah. They've got some young running backs, and they went and got one from Alyssa's school, right?
Oh yeah, Florida State. Yeah.
Florida State. He's a promising, I think, a redshirt sophomore. Didn't play a lot, but the guy's got a lot of ability, highly recruited out of high school. So I think they're recruiting well. There are a lot of people that are dissing their portal class and their recruiting, saying, wow, it's not one of the lowest in the SEC, blah, blah, blah. They can say whatever they want. I'm just comparing what I see now with what I saw last year, and I think they're going to be much better. Now, the whole league could be better. I don't know. You're bringing 2 new teams in there. But I don't see Pittman getting fired. First of all, the people that say that he's going to get fired before the season is over are the same people that believe Bobby Petrino's just waiting there to be the next head coach. They're not paying any attention. Go talk to anybody that knows him. He doesn't want to be a head coach anymore. He's toward the end of his career. His head coaching stuff is behind him. He never liked any of that stuff. It brought out the worst in him. And now he's back on the advice of his agent who originally proposed this. You might like to go back. You've always talked about how much you liked the start of your career when you were an offensive coordinator. That's what he is. And I think he would be perfectly happy to stay here for the next 4 or 5 years and help this school. I think he wants to give something back for the way he left in the first time he was here. And I just think it's a combination that's going to work. The other thing I would mention is you've now got what used to be considered the best offensive line coach in the country, now serving as a grad assistant under Arkansas's offensive line coach. How often does that happen? The head coach is over there being the other guy's grad assistant. You've got 2 guys watching those offensive linemen go through every drill and working with both of them. And what one of them doesn't see, the other does. And then how lucky are those linemen to be able to be coached like that? So if you're going to tell me that line's not going to be better, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, you also, to talk about Bobby Petrino, you may say he doesn't want to be a head coach again, but you can't, ignore the fact he has been a head coach, and he brings that experience of being a head coach. When Pittman says, yeah, the offense, he can run the offense. He's doing that.
He's turned that over to him.
Exactly, and so that you've got to feel good about that as well, that he has that head coaching experience. Whether or not he wants to be a head coach in the future or not, he has that experience, and that's what you like. When you had Barry Odom here, he had head coaching experience. That was good. That was good to have with one of your coordinators. So I think that's another big thing, too. You said you don't see him being fired next year. So how long do you give him if they have a really good season?
Well, I don't know. If he's winning, I think it's more fun. I think he might do it for a few more years. I'm also keeping an eye on Odom. Because remember, Odom hired Bobby Petrino, and then Petrino was only there a little while.
I know.
And then he left. That's how they got this extra quarterback that they ended up with. I can't remember the kid's name, but
yeah, because he was who he recruited over
there. He
there.
recruited him to go there, and then when he left, when Petrino left and went to LSU or
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M.
You're good.
That guy didn't go to UNLV. But what I'm saying is Petrino might stay here through into the next head coach if it's somebody he's comfortable with and somebody that would want him. But I don't know about Pittman. I would say he could coach till he's 65, 66. Who knows? It's up to him. But I don't think he's gone this year. I think people are paying zero attention. The people that say that are paying zero attention to what happened last spring.
All right, DVH and Coach Cal, what you think they got left in the tank?
Yeah, Cal, I don't know. He's got a 5-year contract. Here's what the Kentucky people keep saying. Oh, he only took that job because he wanted out bad and it was the only chance he had. Are you serious? Do you really believe if Cal started sending out signals that he wanted to leave Kentucky, Arkansas was the only option he would have had? That all came about because of Johnny Tyson mentioning and pushing that. We all know how that happened. So that's not accurate. Then the other thing they're saying is, well, once he gets there, he's going to realize how rinky-dink it is and he'll go to the NFL or NBA. I don't think that's true either, because I don't think those Kentucky fans have a clue about what basketball is like around here. If they did, they wouldn't say nutty stuff like that. I'm not disrespecting Rupp. I'm not disrespecting Kentucky's history in basketball.
Yeah.
But if you are so stupid that you don't understand that this has been a basketball school, this was a basketball school going back to the 1930s. They first went to the Final Four in the first few years when there was a Final Four. They had a bad period in the 60s into the early 70s. Then Sutton came along, and from Sutton all the way through Nolan Richardson, this is one of the best basketball programs in the country. Then they went through another rough spell, and then Musselman brought it back. And anybody that says this is a rinky-dink basketball program, it doesn't compare, I am telling you, Rupp is great. Rupp does not equal Bud Walton when Bud Walton has 20,000 people in it and they're going nuts. That's a better facility for what you're looking for.
There's a reason Coach Cal said it at Kentucky that it was one of the toughest places to play.
Yeah. So again, the idea that he's going to come here and go, oh, this is not any good, I think he'll fall in love with it. I think he's seen it from afar. Now he's going to see it with all these people on his side. So I think he'll stay at least the 5 years of his contract. And I don't know what he would do after that. DVH, I don't think he's ready to hang it up. Now the issue becomes winning a national championship. What if they won it this year? Would he then say enough is enough? I mean, he might look at the fact that, you know, Ole Miss won a national championship and then tanked. Mississippi State won a national championship and then tanked. He might look at that and say, oh, winning it all means your program goes to seed. But I don't think he would do that. So I think if he won it this year, he might stick around, try to win one or two more. But I definitely think he's going to stick around to try and win try to win a national championship.
Well, he's a granddaddy now, so we do have to factor that in as well. He likes being a granddad.
The grandkids can come to the games.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I think he's got a little bit left in the tank there. Whippersnapper says between the towns of Greenwood, Charleston, and Boonville, there are over 20 state championships in just football alone. These three towns all seem to be within 20 miles or less from one another as well. So what's in the water or chicken these days for that area? I don't believe there's another region in the state that can say that for high school football.
Well, you'd have to grow up in one of those type towns to understand it. I didn't. High school football was big in my hometown, but they did some things from a school board standpoint and a booster standpoint that didn't necessarily help us win games. There was a school called Denver City that had oil money, and they did it. And going back to Springdale, for many years under Gerald Williams and then on through at least part of Gus Malzahn stuff he did, Springdale was a place, and I knew Don Strubing really well. Don Strubing was a kid that grew up in Springdale. He played 1 year at Arkansas and then went to UCA. Then he ended up on the staff there for a while under Malzahn. And Don told me what it was like growing up in Springdale as a kid. He said, first of all, there was Kiwanis Kids Day football. And when you got involved in a first or second grader in those games, guess who was coaching you? Guys that used to play for Gerald Williams. What were they teaching you? His offense. Then you got into junior high, and they were teaching his offense. So that by the time you got to high school, you'd been in that offense for 8, 10 years. You know, it was like automatic. And then there's the people around town. Don told me that if you lost a game when you played for Springdale High School, you did not go to the barbershop the day after because the guys in the barbershop would barbecue you. He said, we had pressure on us from the people around town. Now, they can be supportive, but they also are demanding. And so that's what I think happens in these places. Boonville, my ex-brother, he's not my ex-brother-in-law, my brother-in-law coached at Boonville for a number of years. I know all about that place. I know all about Greenwood. They do more than crank out football players. They crank out baseball players. They crank out a lot of stuff there. I mean, that's just a very athletic place. So I think what they do is they have the money to hire good coaches, and they do that. They have good facilities. They've got people around town that from the time you're a little kid, you're growing up knowing that it's important to do that. And you know what's good about all of that is those people become Razorbacks.
Yeah, it's real good for Arkansas.
Yeah, so keep doing that.
Yeah, I go back to what Coach Cal said in his press conference. He was talking about obviously the college level, but administrations win championships. And I think that's the same for the high school level as well.
Absolutely.
If your administration,
the school board,
exactly.
superintendent, booster club people, all of those factors.
All of it factors in. And so, you're right, if you've got that community support as well, you're going to win some things.
We had guys in the booster club that go, my son's not playing. I want him to play. And then he was terrible. And you'd be like, what's wrong with you?
Oh, my gosh. Those are my favorite kinds of parents. I really love them, Mike. Our final question of the day. And, Mike, we're running out of time, but this is probably the most complex question. I know we're going to talk about it. Marty Bird's proxy says, if I read correctly, the NCAA agreed to a settlement this week that would allow athletes to be compensated directly without the fraud of NIL. Will this now introduce contracts, as you've discussed before?
It's very complicated. It looks like to me what the NCAA did was meet with some people. There are a lot of lawsuits. This is all about lawsuits. This is why we're in this mess right now, because the NCAA tried to enforce its NIL rules, and Tennessee and 2 or 3 others went, we're suing you. And then they got an injunction, so in effect the NCAA can't enforce its own rules. So what they're trying to do is come back and show to the courts, the court system, hey, yeah, we may have been taking advantages of athletes in the past, but look what we're doing now. And they're willing to even pay back past settlements to athletes back to 2016. What they're trying to do is make, number one, make the athletes more happy about this and make them feel like they're getting a bigger piece of the pie. But I think they're also trying to sway the attitude of a lot of these judges so that in the future, if somebody goes and hits them with a lawsuit, they're less likely to win that lawsuit or get an injunction. The problem is they're not addressing salary cap.
No.
A salary cap has been mentioned, but that would be a salary cap on what you actually pay. Because with this system, schools could pay NIL. They could take money out of their own budget and budget some of it for athletes.
Yeah, up to $21
million. But that doesn't address the private NIL stuff, which this doesn't remove that. So you still could have an Arch Manning dude that comes along and gets $3 million.
Yeah.
And this is what causes the problem. When one guy's making $3 million and somebody else is making, $25,000 or $30,000. It's just the NFL has this figured out with the salary cap. If you're going to start treating college athletics more like professional sports, you better wake up and realize you've got to have a salary cap. In the NFL, you can't buy the best team. You can't do it. You've got to draft it. You've got to get coaches. You've got to develop it. If all you had to do to buy the best team to win the Super Bowl, Dallas would have won 40 Super Bowls because they have more money than anybody else. But you can't do that. Well, are we going to allow A&M or Texas or some of these other schools that generate more money through their athletic department to do this now? To just buy a national championship? Fans will reject this. The fans of the school winning it may like it. Okay, fine. Let's let Texas and A&M and Tennessee and 2 or 3 others just play each other every year to see who's the best. We can ignore them and create our own football league over here with people that have more brains and do it the right way, where you're giving athletes a good situation where they've got their scholarship and maybe spending money and they're not broke, and if they want to buy a car when they get there, you can do that, some things like that. But you're not creating a situation where you just buy a championship. We got more money than you, we'll buy it. They've got to address that or it's not going to solve the problem.
Yeah, this doesn't really solve anything. I mean, and I like what Marty Bird's proxy says, will this now introduce contracts? Well, maybe, but also it doesn't really go into anything about how the money can be broken up amongst the athletes.
Well, the contract is essential, to be honest.
Right.
That the way you would do that is to create an athletes union, like a players union in the NFL.
Right.
You would have to create a union of scholarship athletes. And you belong to the union. You have to belong to it or you can't be a scholarship athlete. And then as the union, you vote. And they say, okay, we're going to give you guys this much money. And you go, okay. That would then prevent the buy, because each school would give you the certain amount and everybody would get the same. And it would go back to how well do you recruit? How much do people like going to your school when they come to visit? Oh, I like this atmosphere here. I love this campus. I like the coaches here. These are reasons why you should go to a school, not because, hey, bub, we got more money here. How about we pull out another $2 or $3 million? I mean, that's going to ruin it. I'm telling you.
A lot of coaches have, agree with you on that
I know
sentiment.
your dad, even at Division II,
Yeah,
is think it's going to ruin it.
He's been very outspoken about it because I mean, I even told you today, I mean, it's affecting the D2 level quite heavily as well. And you were like, really? They have money at the D2 level? And I go,
I was surprised.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
Because they've got boosters that give money.
They have boosters just like Arkansas has boosters as well. And so they have graduates, if they have high-level graduates that they churn out that are making money right now, being aerospace engineers, so they have money to give to athletics.
And I'm not opposed to the athletes getting this money, but I think it should be the same for all of them. I don't think it's going to ever work when you let this guy make this much, this guy make this much, this guy make this much. There's too much of a disparity between them.
I wonder how Title IX is going to be affected, is going to be a part of
well,
it, because technically Title IX doesn't have anything to do with athlete compensation.
As a part of this discussion, what we were reading is that some of these schools may start dropping these so-called Olympic sports. We're talking about tennis, we're talking about golf, we're talking about volleyball, some of these. What if schools just go, well, we can't afford that, we're going to pare down the number of scholarships we have so we can afford it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not good.
No, it's definitely not good. And then you also go into the fact of like, okay, well, football, men's basketball, and you know, possibly now women's basketball is rising to that prominence. They're probably going to get the most money, right? And then how does every other sport get affected?
Again, to me, you give everybody the same. I know people are saying that's stupid.
I know.
Because the football player is worth more, the basketball player. It's not about worth more. It's about you have this amount of money generated by your athletic department. This is not the real world. You're still in college. You know, you're still learning to be in, you go to college to learn what you're going to do as an adult. You're being educated in one way or another, one field or another. You're going to go out in life, and this is going to teach you to do that. And while you're doing that, to me, everybody should be the same.
Yeah, I think it's just very interesting moving forward what this will do, because I think this does definitely change things around. Does this make collectives? I know collectives can still exist, but I mean, it kind of makes them, you know, okay, what are you doing with the collective? Now they can possibly work more closely with the university.
They'll just add the collective to what you're already using.
Yeah, like the university will assume the collective.
Again, if you don't have a salary cap, I'm telling you, the guys with the most money are going to buy the best players.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're going to be playing each other for the national championship every year.
Absolutely. But that's, I mean, that was happening anyways. I mean, now you've just added another layer into it.
I realize that argument. It's always been Alabama's doing it, and but Alabama didn't just do it. I don't care what you say about Saban buying all this stuff. I'm not saying they didn't get some boosters doing stuff on the side. But Alabama won those championships because Nick Saban, all you have to do is watch this guy coach. He took 5-star athletes and made them work like they were 3 stars. Compare Alabama to Texas, because both of them have recruited at a high level for decades. What has Texas accomplished in college football over the last 25 years? What has Alabama accomplished? And the difference is that school, Alabama, had a head coach who said, yeah, you may be a 5-star, you may be a big shot. You're not a big shot to me until you do your job and help us win. That's different, man. That's a whole different thing. That's, to me, what college athletics is all about, is coaching.
Yeah.
Get the right coach.
And you're still going to have coaches that need to develop those athletes. You can throw a bunch of money at some of the best players that you think are coming out of high school, but some of those guys don't develop. You still need coaching staffs to develop these guys and make them into collegiate athletes. Some guys, they'll come to college. How many times have we seen that? Great 5 stars and amazing players that come into the college ranks and don't really produce as much as maybe they were thought to have. So I think you still need great coaching staffs and great coaches to help develop these guys into the athletes they are. So anyways, that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.